You're listening to Chris Drabble's stream of Subconsciousness, and hopefully nothing else. If you are trying to listen to two things at once, maybe you've got some music playing or you're having a conversation with someone, just turn the music off or politely tell the person with whom you're conversing to fuck off and leave the next 20 minutes to me. This is the 6th episode. Sixth and that's a hard word to say, isn't it? Sixth, XTH. It's a difficult string of letters to enunciate, but it is the sixth. It is the sixth. But it is the sixth. Fuck it. I'll just say 7th. It is the 7th episode and final episode of Chris Drabble's stream of Subconsciousness. It's been an enjoyable journey, one that's spanned across a couple of years. It has taken longer than I intended, but I put that down to Grant's incompetence. And in actual fact, Grant's no longer with us. He hasn't died. I've just got rid of him. Well, I hope he hasn't died. I haven't heard from him in some time. He was quite distressed when I let him go. I suppose I should check up on him. But there'll be no Grant in the final episode. I'll just be doing my own producing. Right, enough said. Let's get into it. Oh, I've got to play the jingle there, don't I? Grant usually takes care of that. What do I press here? Space.
No, David's done something funny. Hold on. I'll get rid of that.
Jingle. There we go.
SOS.
What are you saying that for? What's happened?
No, it means stream of subconsciousness.
Clever.
By Chris Drabble.
That's me.
Produced by Grant.
Probably didn't need to mention him.
Just let me do the song.
Fine. Might throw in a harmony.
This is SOS. Chris Drabble stream of subconsciousness.
It's been a real pleasure bringing you. Oh,
SOS.
fuck. It's got jammed on repeat there. Never mind, I'm just learning as I go here. As I was saying, it's been a real pleasure bringing these podcasts to you. I've enjoyed this medium, being able to convey my personality through the safety of the internet. I think it removes some of the pressures involved with live performances, like stand-up comedy, for instance. Obviously, there's a lot more pressure on the performer in that sort of situation. In fact, I can't think of any other profession in which dealing with hecklers is actually a customary constituent of the job description. It's not like an accountant has someone standing at the front of their desk yelling at them, you know, "Oh, you're doing all your sums wrong, you dickhead." Whereas in stand-up comedy, there's a very real chance of that happening. Especially if you're just standing on stage doing sums. So I've enjoyed this method, and although there is no immediate audience response to gratify my material, there was Grant, and I could tell when my material was strong because I'd see a cheeky wee grin on his face. As incompetent as Grant was, he was very supportive of this project, and he did enjoy my material. The day that I fired him, I took him out for a movie to try and soften the blow. It was kind of like breaking up with someone in that sense. So we went and saw Godzilla, was the one he chose, and I also paid for his snack from the candy bar. So I don't think he can be too begrudging. Especially when it costs $9 for a popcorn and water combo deal, was the one he chose. That's essentially Earth's 3 cheapest resources: water, in the form of your pump mini, corn kernels, and then air, which comprises the majority of the corn in its pop state, and that'll cost you the best part of a tenner. And that's just marketing for you. Grant was a victim in that circumstance. He was sucked in by some clever marketing, the way in which those 3 products were packaged and branded. If it had just said water, corn, and air, $9, I don't think he would have been persuaded. Well, he may have. It is Grant. But it's less appealing to the consumer that way. So just be mindful of clever marketing ploys, especially when it comes to healthy options like the instance with the water and the popcorn, as opposed to, say, a litre of Pepsi and a Snickers bar. Those sorts of products are packaged in a way that make them seem a lot better than they really are. I mean, you go to McDonald's and you can get a Happy Meal now with a fruit bag instead of fries. I bet, however, that if you went into McDonald's and asked someone to trade an apple for their fries, they'd laugh in your face. However, if you slice that apple up and stick it in a bag and then say, I'll trade you this fruit bag for your fries, they say, give it here. So it's marketing, isn't it? And apparently, eating fruit now isn't as good for you as we once thought because of its high sugar content. So now you see these fad diets in which you're not allowed to consume fruit, which is ludicrous to me. Perhaps that's why God prohibited Adam and Eve from eating the fruit from the tree. In which case, God, rather than disallowing it to provide Adam and Eve with an opportunity to prove their loyalty and obedience, he was in fact just looking out for their general well-being by restricting the consumption of that fruit. Perhaps then Genesis 2:16 should read, "He who eats the fruit from this tree shall experience a sharp spike in blood sugar levels and an increased risk of type 2 diabetes by 33%. That would be a more realistic rundown of the effects from eating the fruit from the tree. Some people think that science and rationality are completely absent from the Bible. They're not. If you look at the resurrection of Christ, it took him 3 days and 3 nights to rise from the dead after his crucifixion. Now, if he had just done that straight off the bat, it would be disbelievable, wouldn't it? So he's obviously required 72 hours to work through the pragmatics of that stunt, and I think that makes it more believable. Also, just the fact that it's written down and also occurred thousands of years ago legitimizes it. It's like the Mayan prediction that the world would end on December the 21st, 2012. Now, people really believed that because that hypothesis dates back thousands of years and it's written down, which gives it authority. Of course, the reality of it is that back then, they didn't have computer-generated calendars which automatically generate perpetuating years, months and days. There was probably some poor guy who had to etch this calendar out in stone. And after a lengthy time labouring away, the chief eventually said, "Oh, that'll do. Just cut it off there." Like I do with my podcasts, 20 minutes in. And I am the chief in this scenario. I've got no one beneath me though, now that Grant's gone. So it becomes a bit meaningless, really. He was a good lad, Grant. He struggled with the technical side of the job, but he was committed and determined. And I always found a use for him. Sometimes I'd just get him to untangle some cords, and he was good at that. Grant untangled all the cables behind my TV. I didn't even know how the electrons found their way through those cords. It was such an entangled, crazy, chaotic maze. But obviously, electrons are good at that, I suppose. They work together as a team, and they find their way from A to B and get the job done. Teamwork is essential if you're an electron. It's not like when faced with a maze of cables, one of them says, "Follow me, guys," and then another one says, "Oh, piss off, Frank. We followed you last time and ended up back at the wall socket." It's not like that. Electrons are always working and moving cohesively and getting the job done. It's like in a road situation where you're supposed to merge like a zip, which is supposed to promote cohesion, isn't it? They tried merging like Velcro for a while, but it was just too chaotic. So now the sign says like a zip instead. Although, if traffic were to merge like most of the zips do on my jackets, it wouldn't work at all. There'd be jams at various places and I'd have to get Mum to come and fix it. Mums are good like that. And there's no shame in utilising your mother to help you with your problems because there's really only so long you can do that. As a kid especially, you should be using your mum, but you get branded with names like Mama's Boy if you call upon them. When I was young, I got called a Mama's Boy by an older kid at school. And I think it backfired somewhat because I didn't find it particularly derogatory because I'm proud to be my mother's boy. So then he called me a goody two-shoes. And I said, goody two-shoes? What the hell does that mean? Because I'm so apparently conforming and obedient that I wear 2 shoes. How many fucking shoes do you wear, mate? It's not that I was confrontational as a child, it's just that I like to deal with such confrontations head on. And I'm like that today, because simply you shouldn't run away from your problems. Unless your problem is a lack of aerobic fitness, in which case running would probably solve it. But aside from that, if you have an issue with someone, sort it out there and then, because life's too short for unfinished business. Life's too short for several things. In fact, I think that a lot of the things that we do from day to day take too long in relation to the length of one's life. And what I mean by that is, if the average lifespan were to be several hundred years, then I don't think you would be so worried about waiting 15 minutes for your prescription at the pharmacy. However, we've only got 80 years, if we're lucky, on this planet. So I find myself becoming quite impatient when waiting to collect my prescriptions, because the pharmacist will take your form, glance at it, and then say, that will be about 15 minutes. And there's nothing you can actually do in that time. So you take a seat and you sit and you watch. Now, I've watched the pharmacist on several occasions stand there at the checkout, and then after about 15 minutes time, turns around, removes a box of pills from the shelf behind him, and then puts it in a bag and calls your name out. Now, why did that take 15 minutes? I could see what I needed when I got here, right behind you, packaged and ready to go. But we put up with this because getting your pharmaceuticals prescribed to you comes at a fraction of the cost of purchasing it over the counter. So the difference is, rather than paying $20 for 20 Nurofen, you pay $3 for so many that every time someone complains of a headache, you can say, here, have 700 Nurofen. Not all at once, obviously, unless it's a really bad headache, or if you're over 12. I used to send Grant down to get my prescriptions because I just got fed up with the wait. And he enjoyed that wee errand. He used to always buy me a wee treat from the counter, the sugar-free lollipops and those sorts of things. He's a good lad, Grant. It's just a pity that he made a few too many hiccups to keep him on board. And I'm all for second chances. I read an article this morning entitled, "An Ex-Murderer Shows the World Why Giving Him a Second Chance Was the Right Idea." Oh, what the hell is an ex-murderer? I've heard of an ex-murderer, as in an axe-wielding psychopath. However, an ex-murderer refers to someone who was formerly a murderer, but now is not. Surely once you've murdered someone, you're a murderer. You can't just get rid of that label by not murdering people anymore, in the sense that you can become an ex-football player by not playing football anymore. An ex-murderer implies that you're only actually considered a murderer whilst in the process of killing someone. Luckily for me, Grant is not a murderer. He's a gentle soul. He means well in all he does. I hope he's okay. He's obviously got a lot more time to do his own things now that he's no longer under my jurisdiction. He may pursue his interests as an inventor. He was always doodling away, coming up with various new contraptions. I wasn't a big fan of them. Personally, I think that I could have been a great inventor if I lived a few hundred years ago. Grant, I think, doesn't quite have the right idea. So he'll see one product and take an aspect of that product and try and apply it to another one. So he's seen double-sided tape, and he thought, what else can I make that's double-sided? So he devised double-sided playing cards. Similarly, he saw spray-on and roll-on deodorant. So he then applied that concept to air freshener and developed roll-on air freshener. So he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, but that saying is redundant anyway because it automatically assumes that a saw is more useful than a hammer, or a nail is more useful than measuring tape. But really, if you removed any one of those tools from a building context, regardless of its level of sharpness, that project is going to become considerably more difficult. So, different tools for different jobs is the moral there. And that's not only applicable to carpentry. There are plenty of jobs that involve the use of hammers, etc. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Grant, can you think? Oh, you're not there. Maybe I could give him a text. Just ask him, are there any jobs you can think of besides carpentry in which a hammer is a necessary tool? Yeah, I think I'll do that now. This way I can kind of inadvertently check up on him at the same time. Carpentry. Same send. Right, so while we wait for the results of that inquiry, what I think will... Oh, that was quick. Grant. Building! Exclamation mark. I don't think he realises that building and carpentry are one and the same. Oh, he gave it a shot. Always happy to help out. He's a good lad, Grunt. Although he hasn't added a smiley face at the end of that text. And with the exclamation mark, it makes it seem a bit brusque. He really should have softened the blow with the use of an emoticon there. Because a picture speaks 1,000 words, doesn't it? I have a friend who is frequently refused entry into bars and pubs because he looks too intoxicated. However, what the bouncers don't realise is that that's actually just his default face. So he'll have to withdraw his ID and show them the picture and say, no, see, I'm normally this dopey looking. And that got me thinking, perhaps when I need to renew my driver's licence, I'll drink a dozen beers before I get my photo taken. And that way I'll never get refused entry to bars for looking too drunk. Or I could just not drink to excess. No, I'll take the photo option. I mean, what's wrong with having a few drinks after a hard day of not having any drinks? And this is the final episode, so I will be popping the metaphorical champagne. Well, that's not metaphorical. I will quite literally be opening a bottle of champagne to celebrate the end. Although I won't have anyone to celebrate that with, now that Grant's gone. I think I'll give him another text. I'll just say, how would you like to come and join me for a glass of champagne to celebrate all our hard work with Stream of Subconsciousness? P.S. Can you bring a bottle of champagne? He'll like that. Send. Right. I hope he is able to make it for that. It would be nice to... Oh, that's quick. Smiley face. He's responded with a smiley face. What I think we'll do is there's a couple of minutes left in this episode, so now I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm going to stop recording here and freeze frame. And then when Grant arrives, we'll recommence, just so we can have the dynamic duo back together for the finale. Right.
Oh no, that's gone back to that. Hold on. God, I miss Grant.
And welcome back. That nifty sound effect was courtesy of Grant, who's just arrived. It's great to have you back. And you know what? I'm rehiring you. You're rehired. How would you like to come over here to the mic and say something to the listeners? Go on. He's speechless. He can't believe it. How about you bust open that champagne then, eh? Lindau. Oh, you know what? You bought a bottle of rubbish bubbly. So what? It's a happy time. Pop it open. There you go. Woo! On behalf of Grant and myself, thank you so much for listening. It really does mean a lot to us both, and it has been an absolute pleasure bringing these podcasts to you. So thank you again. Grant, can you please do something about this? Just grab a towel or something. It's going everywhere. Or at least a glass.